Welcome into Rounding the Bases, the podcast about culture and leadership with a baseball twist, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. Hashtag no stopping you. Enterprise Bank and Trust was founded by entrepreneurs with the core focus of serving privately owned, small and medium-sized businesses who have a story to tell. Enterprise Bank's commitment is to listen, learn, and guide clients to a lifetime of financial success. Enterprise Bank, together there's no stopping you. My name is Joel Goldberg, coming to you from the Kansas City Audiovisual Studios. They create engaging spaces. Check them out at kcav.com. Phenomenal episode of the podcast coming today. But before we do that, I've got to talk about, real briefly, the brand new book. I've been mentioning it over and over again leading into December of 2020. It is out. It is called Small Ball, Big Results. You can find it on Amazon. And it'll be, if you're in the Kansas City area, in the Made in KC stores, but wherever you are around the world, it's available on Amazon. The early buzz has been great and very exciting and overwhelming and fun. And so a lot of the stories that you hear in this podcast from that question about small ball, the little things that add up to the big things, are in this book with that mix of baseball. There's a lot of military in there. So I'm so excited to be able to have this book out there. You can find out more information at joelgoldbergmedia.com or just jump onto Amazon, search Small Ball, Big Results, Joel Goldberg, and you will find it easily there. I've got a great show today and a woman that I've had the chance to get to meet over the last few months and talk about if the word pivot is the word of 2020 and incredibly overused. I'm guilty of that too. Berta Medina had the ultimate pivot, and she had already had a very full and successful career. She is referred to as the comfort zone lady, and that is because I'm not sure that there's anything that makes her uncomfortable. We'll have to ask her that, and she certainly helps other people and coaches others to get into their comfort zone. It's a really cool story. She's an awesome woman with amazing energy, if I can say that, because she is really infectious with the way she goes about things. Berta Medina joins me right now. Berta, how are you?
Great, Joel. How are you? So happy to be here.
Well, it's good to have you too. I know and have learned in meeting you that you have that top-notch 100% energy, which I actually write about in the book, The Power of Positivity, because not everyone is the loudest person in the room, and you don't have to be the loudest person in the room, but your energy is always infectious. Could be in a good way, could be in a bad way. How important is your energy, before we tell your story, to you? Because you strike me as a woman that just goes, goes, goes.
Yeah, I think it's everything, Joel. And first of all, congratulations on the book. Woo, woo, woo. I know that's huge. So I'm so excited about that. Can't wait to read it. Um, for as far as energy, I think it's everything. And I think, I grew up with a very optimistic grandfather and, struggling immigrants from Cuba, and there was just nothing that was impossible for him. So I was very blessed to have been raised in that atmosphere and really always having that positive way, that positive spin and positive way of looking at things. So it's just part of my DNA, I suppose. But I agree with you. I think that energy, it's positive or negative, it speaks louder than if we're standing, in front of the loudest microphone in the world.
Well, Berta helps businesses and individuals connect genuinely, and I think that's an important word, because you know as well as I do that there's so much kind of fake, what can you do for me now type of stuff. So it's such a breath of fresh air when you get that genuine quality. Give generously and reach a level of success and fulfillment that means more to her clients than just the bottom line. That's what I'm talking about. So Berta's a keynote speaker, professional certified coach with the International Coaching Federation. She's an author. She's a certified Go Giver speaker. Who hasn't read The Go Giver? If you haven't, I mean, probably should. Thrive Through accountability expert and host of the Dreamers Succeed podcast, which I had the pleasure of recording an interview with. But Berta, let's talk about this. How did you come to this pivot after a very successful career?
It was just one of those things, Joel, that been entitled all my life since I was 18 years old, had been doing it for 28 years, figured I was going to do it forever, just loved every minute of it, really, really became enrolled in what that meant. We're at the closing table. We have people, that dream of home ownership. There was so much going on, and I've been blessed to work with some great uh, people in the industry throughout those 28 years. And I got the inclination for coaching. People had always called me a coach. My friends would call me and say, "Hey, Yoda, I need you today." But I didn't know coaching was a real career. And one of my daughter's friends came over. She'd had a bad breakup. She said, "You should really be a coach." And I said, "Oh, everybody calls me that." And she said, "No, but you can really be certified as a coach." And I said, "What?" So I started looking into it. 2 weeks later, I'm enrolled in the University of Miami, the professional coaching program. And that same year, I had received an invitation to go on a mission trip to Kenya. We were going to spend 3 weeks in Kenya and Tanzania. And that trip entailed sponsoring a Maasai child who's living, below the poverty line. And we were going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And then that climb, you were going to raise funds, and that was going to help Sipao, who's my little boy that I sponsored at the time, to get the nutrition, the education, and the medical attention that he needed from age 5 until he graduated high school. Because in Kenya, school is public, but it's not free. So once if they're below that poverty line, they really cannot afford to send their children to school. So I went on this mission trip, was already, in the thick of the coaching program, and came back from that mission trip and told my husband and my kids, "Listen, I'm retiring from title." And they thought I'd hit my head on the mountain. They thought I'd gone crazy, maybe midlife crisis, because I really thought I would die doing title. And I said, "Listen, there's no way that I can serve these children around the world and be stuck in an office 14 to 16 hours a day." I loved it, and I loved the office part of it. I just knew that I couldn't do both. And God was like, "Pick one." And I said, "Okay." And really the coaching, aside from the reward that it is to be a coach, it really gave me not only the abundance and the lifestyle, but the time availability to be able to mission trip and really be able to effectuate some change for these children.
Well, it's such an interesting career change, because you mentioned being in title. I mean, you were working the corporate world, the real estate world, the world of title insurance for not 5 or 10 years or 12 years or 15 years, 28 years. I'm thinking about that. And, I made my pivot into the world of speaking after about 22, 23 years in television. I also didn't leave television. I added it on, and it was certainly one of the great moves of my life professionally, and it's been so fulfilling. But you just picked up after a career that, like, you probably could have said, "Okay, I'm retiring, I'm done. That's it, period. I'm a grandmother also. I want to spend time with the family." You just picked up and started a whole nother career.
Right.
How difficult was that? Or was it just the adrenaline, the invigoration of finding that next passion?
Yeah, I think the passion, and that's a great question, Joel, because I think the passion for that was always there. I mean, I've always been an avid volunteer. I just did a presentation this morning around the importance of really instilling that in our children. My kids are 30 and 32 now, but when they were 8 years old, that's the youngest you could be to volunteer in a lot of these events. I was a volunteer coordinator for Hands on Miami, for Volunteer Broward. So for their eighth birthdays, what they would get was the gift of volunteering. Okay, now we're going to start. And it just becomes a normal path in their life. So that was always in there. I just hadn't had an opportunity to do it in such a big way as this mission trip. Both my mom and my mother-in-law lived with us, very Cuban traditional. The woman is the woman of the house, and that's just how it is. So, Cuban women, postmenopausal grandmas, don't go and travel abroad without their husband. They don't go on these crazy expeditions where it's so risky and there's so much involved in going to these foreign countries where there could be so much turmoil. But I just felt it was very natural for me that it was just that stage in my life. But it was definitely a pivot. Like I said, a lot of people thought I just lost it. And but for me it was almost like, and Joel, it was crazy because my phone and my email were always blowing up. I mean, I had an office in Miami, an office in Orlando, a lot of business going on, a lot of beautiful interactions with people that I had working with me. And all of a sudden I decided I came back October. By December 31st, I said I'm going to be retired. And it's almost as if God was like, okay, I'm gonna clear your path. And I had a couple of offers to buy the company, and I didn't want to go through what I had to go through, leave my license and all of that, because there's so many things involved in that. And I gave away my Orlando business to someone who I know would benefit greatly. And I gave away my Miami business to a couple who I'd worked with, who allowed me, when before I started my own company, to work from home when the kids were off of school. And I felt that was one way that I could pay them back. And they fought with me. Listen, we'll buy it. How much do you want? And I said, listen, I'm leaving this very happy. I'm leaving this in a really good place. And I said, just pick up the phone on Sunday and keep my prices. was my requirement for my clients. And we still keep in touch. I still have great relationships with all of my clients. But it was just I think the timing could not have been so perfect where everything sort of fell into place. Feel very blessed about that.
Well, it's so inspiring on so many levels. I think first and foremost because you are affecting so many lives. And you know as well as I do, you know better than I do, that you affect those lives even in the world of title insurance. They just don't always know it. They know it when it doesn't work out, right? But it's a job where you are helping people in
Right.
getting into their homes or whatever it is, but they oftentimes don't even understand what title insurance is. That, homeowners don't want to think about that kind of stuff. It's
Right.
obviously very necessary, but now you have that emotional connection of really helping people find their comfort zone.
Mhm.
Is there anything that you wouldn't do? I'm not talking about like one of those weird shows or whatever, but jumping out of planes, doing like thrill seeking type of stuff, bungee jumping, whatever it is. Does anything scare you?
I think it all scares me. I think that's the part that makes it fun. I mean, if there's not a certain degree of fear involved, then what's the point? The trick is to dare to face that fear, overcome it, get through it, and move on to the next thing. Was it scary? I Born and raised in Miami. We don't even have hills in Miami. I was already 47 years old, postmenopausal, had never climbed a mountain in my life. So yeah, was it scary to go and think? But I was really, really focused on the why I was doing it. So I knew I had made a decision early on that I was either going to summit or die, right? And it's the same thing with jumping out of planes. Your fear exists until you reach, they open that door and you jump off, right? And I always encourage everyone. We're born with two fears, right? The fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. That's it. Everything else gets injected in us by society, by our parents, by our teachers, by the fears that everybody shares. Because even when they're not good at sharing other things, they'll share those fears, and they become ours. And until we face them, we don't realize that they're not real. They only exist until you dare to push the envelope on those. So yeah, I mean, I feared, but I'll never not try to venture beyond the limitations of that fear.
So, how does conquering those fears help someone professionally in their business, whatever their field is? Because we all have fears in terms of whether it be finances or getting that big deal. How does that perspective help clients?
Well, I think one of the most important things, Joel, is that you begin to question what else is not real. And I have the perfect example is one of my first clients early on. We started working together, and I found out through conversations that she was afraid of heights, and there was a lot going on in her life. I mean, she just had a very toxic breakup. She was a single mom now with two kids. She had to, she lost her home. She ended up, living with her parents, and it was just everything around her seemed to be. So she comes to coaching because she said, I feel like I'm in quicksand and I feel like I can't get out. And the more I struggle and the more I move, the more I feel like I'm going down. So during a conversation, I find out that she's afraid of heights. So we would meet every couple of weeks at a Starbucks near our house, near my house. So one day I told her, listen, just meet me there, same Saturday, but be there at 5 in the morning. And she's crazy, right? Because she showed up at 5 in the morning. So I put her in my car and we drove to Clewiston, Florida, which is about an hour and a half from where I live. And we park at Florida Air Ridge Park, and it's this hang gliding park. So we get there, and as soon as we park, her face is beet red. She starts to sort of hyperventilate, and she's asking me, what are we doing here? And I said, listen, your flight is paid for, but you don't have to do it. I'm not going to force you to do it. I'm going to do it. And I had done it many times. And I said, but I just want you to know that you're covered if you want to do it. So by the time it was our turn, she built up enough courage, and she spent 11 minutes at 1,000 feet in the air in this hand gliding, this tandem. And she came down and she completely, it just blew her mind. And she said, if I told my kids and my parents what I just did, they would not believe me. And I said, well, actually, I had them record the entire flight, and you have enough video and photos that you can always remind yourself that fear ceases to exist the minute that you face it. So what happened with her, and what happens with everyone, and that's why I always say I can get someone where they need to be in 6 months if I can get them to jump out of a plane with me, what would take me 3 years at a Starbucks, right? She started questioning all these other limiting beliefs that she had. She said, well, I thought I wasn't good at this. She made a career change. She lost 90 pounds. She eventually got her own house. She started questioning all these other, she had this paradigm shift of, what else am I not believing about myself that I really am capable of? And that's what happens with everybody. And sometimes it's going on a hike. I have a client she's been in Florida 7 years, and she's never walked outside, like as a stroll or exercise or anything, because she's afraid of snakes. And I said, listen, I have lived in Florida all my life, and I have yet to run into a snake. And I am on a trail every week at least. And it was just, that was her comfort zone. And it was just getting her into a park, and we went for a 3 mile hike, and she felt empowered, and she felt like, what else she started questioning what else is going on in there. So I think that's probably the most important element of that.
One follow-up on that. When you see someone make that change, when you see someone face that fear and then come to that realization, what does that do for you? How does that make you feel?
Well, for me and Joel, I realized it has nothing to do with me. Marie got on that hang glide machine, and the papalote, and she went up, and that really had nothing I was just the vehicle that got her there. But it really is, it's always the person that will take that step and go and venture beyond that comfort zone. I think what it does for me, I feel a tremendous sense of happiness for them, because I know how liberating every other domino that's going to fall after that is going to be. And again, I don't take credit. It has nothing to do with me. It was just, if I make the invitation, a lot of people won't take the invitation. It really is up to them. But it's really freaking rewarding and cool
Mhm.
that we get to do this for a living.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate in the sense that just getting on stage, when you start to hear people afterwards, we haven't really been on a lot of stages, but even virtually, and you'll get a message
Hmm.
a day later, a week later, a month later, sometimes even months or a year later. Hey, you mentioned so and so, or you inspired me to do this, and you think, wow, okay, made a difference. But I mean, I've just got to think, to be able to see someone face that fear and jump out of that plane. I actually believe you could get me to jump out of the plane, and that scares the living hell out of me. But we'll see. Maybe one day. I don't want to sign up for that quite yet.
Yeah.
But I have no doubt in your abilities to help in that process. Okay, time for the baseball themed questions brought to you by Kissick
Yes.
Construction. Trusted team, reliable partner. Check them out at kissickco.com. What is, Berta, the biggest home run that you have hit of your career?
I think the biggest home run was daring to make that daring to make that pivot, trusting that in my ability to, if I built this, I can build the next thing. I think that was the biggest thing. So, summiting that mountain probably was the caveat and the catalyst for that. But that's the biggest thing. Just having the confidence to know that we can pursue our dreams and succeed.
If you can conquer Mount Kilimanjaro, you can do anything, right?
There you go.
Pretty awesome. Okay, how about a swing and a miss? And what did you learn from it?
A swing and a miss. That's a good one. I love that question, Joel. Okay, and I'll tell you what happened to me and I love coaching. I believe that I was born to be a coach. I think everyone, when they found out that I was seeking to get my certification, a lot of people were like, this is going to fit you like a glove. This is it. This is where, even though I'd been known as the title lady. So when I began speaking, there was a lot of time restraints as far as the engagements and the traveling and all that, everything that comes with speaking, even though I loved it. Speaking was a great way for me also to fill my coaching practice. So I thought, I'm going to focus on the speaking, and the coaching is going to sort of take a back seat. And I remember I had a conversation with my son, and he said, but you're a coach. You can't just speak on speaking. Your expertise in coaching is what gives you that credibility as a speaker. And for a minute, I thought that I was going to put coaching on the back burner. And the interesting thing was that in order to do that, and this is probably the biggest lesson that I learned with that, I raised my prices like 700% on coaching, because I said, I don't want anybody to call me. I'm going to work with 10 people and that's it. And I want to have time to speak and go out there and really make an even bigger impact. Of course, not knowing and not realizing, even though I understood the impact I was making as a coach. And what was interesting, Joel, was that when I did that, and I talk a lot about pricing with my clients, my coaching practice filled up in 2 months. What hadn't happened in 3 years before that. And especially this year with this shift that we've had to make, and those of us who are speaking now, we're speaking on the virtual stage where coaching took that front seat again. Not that I was never allowed to let it take a back seat. It helped me to really crystallize and understand that the impact is in the coaching. Because I don't know, if I'm coaching one person, what impact that person is going to have. If I'm doing a group, which I did this year, I hadn't done before, what impact that's going to have. So that was a big lesson for me, where I tried to swing. I missed with focusing on just speaking and not coaching. And it was a tremendous blessing of a lesson, because they always are.
Right. You learn from them. You're
Yeah.
better because of them. And then the last question, the theme of the book, small ball. What are the little things that add up to the big things?
The little things for me are always, I keep a very good calendar. I keep a very detailed calendar. They call me the accountability bitch, and I am as accountable to myself as I am to my clients. And it's the consistency in the follow through that makes all the difference. It's that whole concept of, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. But it's never the big swings and the home runs that'll do it, right? As you always say, Joel. It's all those little things that we're doing consistently, that sometimes we don't notice, but eventually down the line, you're going to look back and you're going to say, hey, there's been a lot of progress. The needle is really moving. And what makes those move is those little things, those daily routines. I'm big on a morning routine. I'm up at 5, and I'm very intentional about what I do with the first couple of hours of my day. I read viciously. I mean, I think I'm at 67 books for this year, and I can tell when I'm not reading, because when I'm not reading, my mind is not where it needs to be. My attitude is not where it needs to be. So I feed myself with the reading, and it's just being consistent about those things that are keeping you in the right space to be able to succeed.
Quick follow-up on that one. Do you have a favorite? I'm putting you on the spot here. Of those 67, that's more than a book per week, which is amazing. I know people like that. I don't have the patience, or maybe more importantly, I don't have the discipline that you do and the habit that you do. But 67 is remarkable. Let's make sure we add 68 to that, by the way, with small ball big results. I'm
Yeah.
promoting. It's
Yes,
just
listen, yes, yes,
completely
absolutely.
shameless, by the way. But what some good Cuban stories in there too. Not that that matters, but I do want to get to that in a moment. But my question to you is: do you have a favorite or a most impactful to you in 2020 in terms of books?
I think 2020 Traction was really impactful. Okay. The Oz Principle was really impactful. I think there have been a number. There's a great book, and it's not been out for very long. It's Connected was extremely impactful, and I think it's just because we're in that space, Joel. You and I, where we're so dedicated to the relationships that we're building with people. It's not about a referral or a transaction. It really is about the relationship. I know you and I have shared stories about the great stories that you have with relationships that you've been able to build over the years. But I think there's a lot of good stuff out there, a lot of really good stuff out there. But I think those are my in in my top 10. Those are probably my top three that I've read this year.
All right, pretty good stuff there. Four final questions as we round the bases. And I think just because of my love of food, I have to ask anyone of Cuban descent about
Mhm.
Cuban food because it's one of the first things that I have to do
Yes.
when I go to Miami. And I told you before that there's something very similar in terms of the culture, I believe, of the Cuban heritage and then the Jewish religion, in the sense that we always have to make sure everyone is overfed. It is,
Yes.
it's like a sin to run out of food. So we end up making
Yes.
sure that there is too much. I learned this when I've been taken to the restaurant Versailles in Miami, very famous Cuban restaurant, and was basically told by a Cuban friend of mine, Eric Hosmer, former Kansas City Royal, San Diego Padre. I'm good friends with his uncle. And his uncle said to me, every time we've been in there now, says, well, let's just order one of everything. And he's exaggerating a little bit. He goes, but have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? And, they
Yeah.
roll me out of there. What is it about
Yeah.
Cuban food and the culture that is so important?
Yeah, I think one of the neatest things, and I grew up in a home where it was grandmother and grandfather, and then my mom, my aunt, and four cousins, right? I was an only child, but I never grew up as an only child. So every weekend, every one of we have hundreds of cousins, but it was all the Miami cousins would come to, because my grandmother was the matriarch of the family, and she would just be cooking all the time. And it's funny because even in my home, we have, I mean, when we built this house, we built it so that we could entertain. Everything revolved around being able to entertain and feed. And everybody always congregates in the kitchen for whatever reason. But the food is the one thing, I have friends, we have my daughter's boyfriend is coming in Friday. He's from Wisconsin, never been to Florida, never even tried Cuban food. So all I'm thinking is, what dishes am I going to make to introduce him to the real traditional things? What restaurants are we going to take him to? We're blessed. He's going to be with us for 10 days. And it's going to be a trip and a half seeing him interact on Christmas Eve, like a traditional Cuban Christmas Eve, right? But everything with a Cuban family, as with a Jewish family, I know the Italians are like that too, really revolves around the kitchen. And that's how we show love. That's how we communicate. That's our relationships. You never show up at anyone's house without bringing something. And if you make something, you always make enough so that if someone shows up or someone can take some home. It's just the way, and I don't know where that originated, but that's just the way it's always been for us.
Oh, it's so good, and I want to go down there right now and try one of everything again. It
Yeah.
just, we could start with the beans and the rice and the plantains, and then just the spices and the flavor on that pork. Okay, I'm getting hungry thinking about all
Yeah.
this, so we better move on a little bit. Second question, as we round the bases, let's talk about climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. Was there a moment among all the moments that stands out to you? What was the most impactful moment with that journey?
I think the interesting thing about that journey, and day four, we spent 7 days on the mountain. It took us 6 days to get up, and then you're up there. They only allow you to be at the summit for about 15 minutes because the oxygen is so thin and it's hard to breathe, and it's just not healthy to stay beyond that. So then we stay up there, and then the next 2 days we're coming down. But around day four, we had to we had to climb this area. They call it looks like a wall. I mean, you're looking at the mountain and it looks like a wall, but there is a trail there. And that's when they say that's when most people will quit, and that's when most people will stop. And it was just hard. It was everything. And my husband spent the 7 months that I had to prepare for that trip, he spent watching YouTube videos of people dying on Mount Kilimanjaro, right? And he would tell me, you got to come and watch this, because it's not just, I would tell everybody it's an overglorified hike. It is what it is. And I didn't watch anything. I didn't want anything putting any prerequisites in my brain. I didn't want to know what it was going to, I wanted to be completely surprised. I wanted to experience everything for the first time when I was there. And that fourth day just kicked everybody's butt. I mean, it was rough. That's the day where people were throwing up. That's the day where people who didn't get sick. And I was spent, Joel. But I took it very slow. They have a saying that's pole pole, and it means you got to take it very, very slow. We had marathon runners and we had athletes in our group who thought, it's okay. And I'm used to this. And they were racing up, days 1 through 4. And by day 5, they were feeling it. So what I would do is every day we'd leave together, and eventually we'd break up into, a front group, a middle group, and a back group. And I would always look for whoever was walking all the way in the back. And that's who I would spend the day with, always at the caboose. But by day 7 or by day 6, when we were summiting, which I was not probably supposed to summit, I got there right after the first group that made it, and I think they were shocked to see me, and I was shocked to see me. But we had a little, all of our in our backpacks, we had a little key ring with the picture of the child that we sponsored. So as you're walking up, these trails, the person in front of you, you can see their child in their backpack. And that really served as fuel for us to keep things going. Listen, this is bigger than us. And there was a lot of prayer, and there was a lot of faith in our ability to summit. We had an amazing team, the people at Evans Adventures. We had 82 guides and porters serving our group of 23 climbers.
Hmm.
So it was almost like we were destined to succeed if we just, kept our oxygen up and kept things going. We were going to be able to, we were going to be okay. And I think that was the biggest thing. When it got really hard and really, really doubtful, it was keeping track of that vision and remembering why we were there that kept us going.
Absolutely amazing, and I know life-changing, and that's one of those. I don't know if people have that on their bucket list, so to speak, but that's got to be the ultimate. And so that leads me to my third question as we round the bases. You were telling me that you've been to every state except for Hawaii. You've clearly been all around the world. Doesn't necessarily have to be a destination, but what is tops on your bucket list, Berta?
Tops on my bucket list that I haven't been to yet.
Either a place or something to do.
Something to do. I want to climb Kili with my granddaughter when
Hmm.
she's old enough. And she's 9 now, so she's probably old enough, but I don't know if I can get her there. And she's willing. We've got now a total of 13 sponsored children in Kenya, and we have children sponsored all over the world. But I focus on Kenya because I made a commitment to Bao, my first sponsored child, who's now 12, that I would be back to see him every couple of years. In fact, we had a trip this year in June and we had to cancel, so I was bummed about that. But I would love to, when she's ready, stay in shape so that I can summit with her. That's the biggest thing on my bucket.
And will it be on her bucket list?
I don't know, but maybe if I tell her I'll pay for your trip, she'll take it. And that's,
Right.
in addition to building schools and serving the homeless and a lot of things that are on my vision board. But I think that's a big one because so many things have to be right for that to happen, I think.
So inspiring. And most importantly, yes, from a personal standpoint for you, how amazing to be able to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. But the deeper meaning here is the amount of money, the amount of care, the amount of love and passion that is going in to so many of these kids on these mission trips. All right, last question, the walk off. And you talked about being the accountability bitch and being a planner. And it's very
Mhm.
obvious to me that you pay attention to every detail. If you have the discipline to read 67 books in a year, and you were telling me before we came on that you have a little bit of a different strategy in the way that you end the calendar year. And I think it's something that a lot of people can learn because right now, many of us are in a little bit of that checkout mode, or we're about to be with the holidays. Not that you won't enjoy the holidays, but tell me about the way you go about the end of the year, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a great, and thanks for asking that, Joel. What I do is I strategize. My kids are always home. They're my business partners in the company. So Thanksgiving weekend is strategizing weekend. And we sort of set our goals and set things in motion of what we want to do for the following year. So December 1st is when my new year starts. So I still am wrapping up, I still have December to wrap up the year that we're in, but I start my year and my next goal is December 1st because that way, by the time January comes around, I'm full force and effect into the year. What used to happen to me was I'd wait for that. Okay, we're going to finish off the year. We're going to celebrate the holidays. And January 1st is still a holiday. January 2nd, nobody really feels like doing anything. The kids don't go back to school till the 7th or the 8th. And then, but we have, Martin Luther King weekend. Let's just start after that. So by the time you really start getting things into gear, it's February and you've lost an entire month. So what I do, and Joel, I'm very finicky, like you said, about details and calendar and everything, but I schedule a lot of playtime. I mean, one of the biggest metrics that I keep is making sure that I am playing and making sure that I am enjoying. And I always tell people it's funny because I even schedule in the spontaneity, right? And I think that keeps me grounded. It keeps me healthy mentally and spiritually. And but by the time January comes around, it's almost like nothing has. I haven't really missed a beat. I celebrate hard in the holidays. I always have guests. I always travel. I didn't sign up for it, but you know how Google at the end of the month sends you like everything that all the traveling you've done. So I got mine for the end of November. So it said this year you've traveled around the world 1.72 times. You've been to 482 cities. You've been to 2 regions. And I'm thinking, that's not bad for a pandemic year because I really did not stop. I mean, I was safe about it, but I really did not stop traveling. And so there's not a there's a celebration, and once I got to that point where there's really no difference between the work and the play. I love what I do so much and I enjoy it so much, and because I can do it from everywhere or from anywhere, I don't really have to stop and say, okay, now I'm going to take a vacation. sometimes I'll be in the Smoky Mountains for 2 weeks and people will say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were away." And I said, "No, this is just life." I'll pull over and have a call or whatever I need to do. So I think that's really helped because I've been able to craft it, with God's help, to craft it so that there's not it's very blurred, the line between work and play, which is a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah, and a very healthy way to go about life and affecting all of those around you too. And you're so many clients, whether it be those that you're coaching or those that are in an audience for a keynote or your listeners to the podcast. So I'm so glad that one, we have met, two, that you were able to come on to the podcast and share that optimism. I love that Berta is really described as the eternal optimist who believes in the power of generosity. And I mean, who can't live with that? It's such a great way to live life. She's the founder of Dreamers Succeed. She's got the Dreamers Succeed podcast, and you can learn everything that you could possibly want to know about Berta and all of her services on her website, bertamedina.com, Bertamedina. Berta, I hope you have a fantastic holiday, Christmas, that the house has all of the excitement and the smell of that amazing Cuban food. Thank you so much for coming on and joining me on the podcast.
Wonderful, Joel. I'm honored to be here. And when you're down in Miami, let me know.
I'm either going right to you or right to Versailles or both, and I'll gain a lot of pounds,
Yeah,
and we can go hike afterwards or whatever, and it'll all be worth it. So thanks, Berta. Appreciate it.
yeah, exactly. Totally worth it. Thank you, Joel, and congratulations.
I appreciate it. I just cut her off there. She was saying congratulations on the book. Thank you. A shout out to my sponsors, Kansas City Audio Visual, Kissick Construction, and Enterprise Bank and Trust. Businesses often come to Enterprise Bank because they need a partner that leverages a longer-term strategy in helping them to overcome short obstacles in achieving their goals. You can reach me at joelgoldbergmedia.com. Once again, you can get the book there, Small Ball, Big Results, or on Amazon. It's December as we're recording this, so I hope everyone is safe, has a great holiday season, and I hope to catch you next time on Rounding the Bases.